Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick, and we're doing a wide receiver review, positional review. Since the Giants, there's no friggin' news, let's review the position that everyone loves to talk about, wide receivers. Justin Pennick, how are you?
Is the intro song wide receiver?
No, that's if we do for the draft. So I guess people know what the intro song is, but anytime there's a presidential inauguration, and I did this 4 years ago and did the Wycliffe Gene, If I Were President. Just gotta love that song, so it's like an excuse to use that song anytime, you know.
There you go.
What would you do if you were president?
It's a great question. Put a dome over MetLife, even though I have no control over that. The governor's office does, though. They were looking at it at one point. I have some information on that, and I can't share it.
I would add John Mara to my cabinet to make sure someone else can run the Giants for the next 4 years.
But it would be Chris McDonald, though. That's the thing.
Well, you just mixed up two people. Is this actually Chris Mara and then Tim McDonald?
Oh, whoa!
And you thought you weren't thinking ahead of far enough. I'm also bringing those two into my cabinet as well.
Oh, okay. So then who runs the? Oh, just Tish has a great time.
Honestly, that's just, everyone jokes about Steve Tisch, but that's what an owner's supposed to do: hire people and then get out of the way, and then come in and be like, "All right, do you need to be fired or not?" Yes, no. Let's talk about these wide receivers, Justin. Before we get into them, this episode is brought to you by some special people. We got Tommy Carney. We got Jake Smith, John Smith, and weirdly enough, Bill Smithley. Justin, who are these special people?
Any relation? Those wonderful people went to patreon.com/talkinggiants. I think Bill Smithley and John Smith are related, not the other one. Patreon.com.
John Smith, the most common name in the world.
Patreon.com/talkinggiants, $2 a month plus some of the tiers. You get to hang out with us live while we record the shows. Just had a nice little chat about Patreon, about some ideas that we're cooking up, off-season stuff. You know, it's a slow time of the year. We're going to be in Mobile, Alabama next week. Excited about that. That has nothing to do with Patreon, but appreciate our patrons. Bobby Skinner will send you some stickers in the mail. Patreon.com/talkinggiants. Thanks for our patrons. We appreciate you. Love you. I have a question to ask you before we talk about these wide receivers, because it's very slow news, and maybe we can just talk about this. So we are going to be in Mobile, Alabama next week. We're going to live stream on JM Football the NFC East NFC Championship game next week between the Commanders and the Eagles.
No, we're not. We're doing Bills Chiefs.
Oh, never mind. Then we will not be live streaming that game because it's on Saturday.
No, they're both on Sunday, dude.
What?
Get it fucking right. One game's at 3, one game's at 6:30.
All right, I'm on crack.
And then it's 2 o'clock in Alabama time, so we need to, we're not going to stream for both games, so we stream the evening game.
I'm on crack. What is your emotions and feelings as a Giants fan that the Commanders and the Eagles are playing in the NFC Championship game?
Oh, I hate it. It's you root for the lesser of two evils, so I'd like the Commanders to win. At least my brother can get some happiness as a fan. But I'm not afraid to admit that when Saquon goes for 200 yards, it fucking bothers me. It bothers me, and then on top of that, it goes annoying. And I'm also not going to be one of these guys who's like, well, actually, the Giants running backs had more rushing yards this year than they did last year. And blah, 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 blah. I'm just not going to do that. But it sucks. It sucks to have that, great of a talent. Was averaging 3.9 yards per carry for us last year, and now he just rushes for 200 yards every game. It sucks, and people can't admit it.
I watched Giants football this year like a lot of people did, or some of you did. I watched Giants football this year, and a phrase that would come up and a feeling that would come up pretty often is, of course, naturally. Not anger, not frustration, not, what is this? Blah, blah, blah. I'm really mad that this is happening. This guy sucks. This stinks. It would just be, of course, naturally that happens. No matter how high you were on Jaden Daniels going to Washington, or the Giants not being able to get a higher pick, nobody would have ever thought at the start of the year that Washington would be this good and score 40 points in a playoff game, and Jaden Daniels would be literally the best playoff QB that we've seen so far in the postseason. He is the best. Nobody would have ever thought, even if you're the biggest Saquon Barkley fan, nobody thought that he was going to come 100 yards away from breaking the rushing record, and the only reason why he didn't get the rushing record. Don't give me that face. I just saw your face.
I feel like you could have predicted he got 1,800 yards, though.
Okay, but not
we knew he was
good.
great. and
Not
behind
this
the Eagles
good.
O-line that's made Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift look really good. Yeah, not that good, but I thought Saquon was going to have a great year.
Yeah. But nevertheless,
it was
my feeling is just, of course, naturally, like of course, on top of the Giants having their worst season in 100 years, of course, naturally, the rest of this shit is going on, and we can't even enjoy half of a conference, half the league's playing football, because every time that we're watching one of our division rivals have success, our own incompetence is constantly flying in the back of our brains. We can't even sit down and enjoy a game without constantly getting reminded of what we're doing. So in the past years, I've been able to put it aside. You know, people would watch like just two random teams and be like, the Giants suck, look at these teams. And I'd be like, all right, I'm able to put it past. And watching both of these teams do what they're doing, in particular with, hey, I would have loved Jaden Daniels, even though they didn't really have a shot, and then Saquon Barkley. Of course, naturally. That's my feeling.
Well, I will say the one part that does annoy me is people sharing the clip of Joe Shane's son being like cheering for Jaden Daniels. Like, this dude fucking gets it. Well, it's like clearly his son doesn't get it enough because that wasn't possible. That literally wasn't possible. Like, well, they could have lost those. Okay, I understand. Yes, you're right. They could have lost those games. They didn't. They didn't fucking tank their season with 7 games left. You're right. You are so right that they didn't just go out there and intentionally lose. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Let's talk about these wide receivers, Justin. And let's talk about the reason why we don't have Jaden Daniels and Drake May is because we have Malik Nabers, Justin. And it starts with Malik Nabers. 109 catches, 1,207 yards, and 7 touchdowns in his rookie season. Justin, we can break down every which way Malik Nabers is great. He's the first 1,000-yard receiver for the Giants since 2018. Most yards for a Giants wide receiver since Odell in 2016 in one last game. Broke the Giants franchise record for catches, but was held by Steve Smith. Most receptions for a rookie in the NFL in history until Brock Bowers broke it later that day. Most receiving touchdowns for a Giants player since Darius Slayton had 8 in 2019. As a rookie, was 5th in receptions in the NFL, 3rd for wide receivers, and then 7th in yards. Let's keep it simple. He's an all-pro level player on a team that has only had 2 players that have been named to that team, and Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence. He didn't get any awards this year, but he is an all-pro player. He will get all-pros. He's a top 3 player on the team as a rookie, and he's probably going to be the second best by time next year. And hell, he might even be the second best right now to Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, I can't help, especially at the start of the season, man. The Malik Nabers mania was awesome when there was a point where the Giants were 2-3 and they come off that Seahawks game, and Malik Nabers is a huge part of it. Malik Nabers was even a huge part of why they were in that Washington game. In the beginning of the year, you kind of remember the drops a little bit. The Dallas game where he was knocked unconscious, I don't put that on him. The Washington game, the drop hurts, but that's really the only negative part of his rookie season. There's some stats and there's some areas that I want to talk about that I want to see him improve in, but this is because, like you said, Bobby, this is an all-pro level caliber of player. So now heading into year 2, where hopefully maybe the Giants are going to be able to get improved quarterback play and just overall, hopefully a better offense. I want Malik Nabers to continue to take some steps up. But for year 1, with the offensive infrastructure the way that it was, the quarterback play the way that it was, and especially as the season unfolded, how Malik Nabers was able to finish the season where the Giants just eventually decided, all right, you're the offense, bro, be about it, and he was. And he stepped up to that occasion and fought through injury, by the way. I admire Malik Nabers for that. I gained a lot of respect for him as the year went on, and I'm confident he's going to be a stud for us.
Yeah, I do want to talk about some 3 things that he needs to improve on. And one thing I don't think is his fault at all. It's just, to me, it's directly in line with the quarterback play. But it's just for the Giants, who have been so bad for so long and have missed on draft picks, coming into this year, Justin, it's like, what would be nice if we don't have to wait and talk about development with our first round pick and patience. Like, how about you just hit the ground running? And then we're at training camp, and we always try to be a little cautious with training camp because then you get bit by the Darren Waller bug or whatever. But it's like, man, this is not even exciting. Like, training camp was not exciting for Malik Nabers because it was so clear that he was a great player. If Darius Slayton or Jalin Hyatt or whatever was having the type of training camp that he's having, we'd be talking about nonstop. With Nabers, it's like, let's just get to the regular season because we know you're going to produce, and I want to see it happen in NFL games. And he put together a great year. Obviously, was force-fed a ton. He had the second most targets in the NFL while also missing 2 games. But here's where that does hurt his yards per catch, where he only has, 11. But this is why I don't look back. If you want to look at the receptions and be like, I'm not impressed by the amount of receptions, fine. Like, that's too. But the force feeding, I don't think it inflated his other stats too much because those really didn't work out, right? The force feeding receptions, when have those worked out, right? If anything, they should do that a little less. Let's get receptions to 90 and, have a more effective receiving yards, especially with early on in the season, he was taking a lot of hits, and it's like this is not sustainable. Now, obviously, he got concussed, which doesn't have to do with his total amount of hits. So yeah, just a star player, a stud. Happy he's on the team. So Malik Nabers is great. So let's talk about the things he needs to improve on. Here's my biggest one, because I have 3 categories. We're going to talk about deep passes. Right, and I think you want to talk about that. Drops, but that to me is a small potatoes when we talk about rate and shit like that. Here's the thing I think he truly needs to improve on, and not just part of becoming a second-year player. Get fucking lined up. Simple as that. Darius Slayton was having to tell him where to line up nonstop, and there was a lackadaisical approach to getting out of the huddle and learning the playbook. He had 5 illegal shifts. That was the most in the NFL. The second most was 2 players who had 2. Right? So if you combine the 2 players who had the second most, they still didn't have as many as Malik Nabers. And not only were these just 5-yard penalties, I can't remember the first 2, but I do remember the last 3 illegal shifts. You took 2 20-plus yard plays off the field for you, right? That's a pretty nice difference in the statistical category or moving the ball. And then, it led to a Drew Lock pick 6 against the Falcons. Now, that's Drew Lock's fault, but Malik Nabers didn't help with that. And that's where I come to, just dedication to the craft. And that's why I think the Giants would be better off with a coach who was held guys a little more accountable, and why I thought maybe they can change their wide receiver position coach with Mike Groh. It also can happen with a quarterback who demands more out of that. But there was little stuff. Like, I remember the Daniel Jones interception against the Panthers where he throws it a little bit behind Tyrone Tracy in the flats, and we're all looking at Malik Nabers open on a slant afterwards. And it's like, yeah, but they had a 0 blitz. Malik Nabers takes way too long to get into his break. Have a better understanding of what you're trying to run on offense and what the defense does. If you break that off a lot quicker and don't sit there and set shit up, just go. And that might be a touchdown, or Daniel Jones doesn't throw it, and we criticize him more strongly for that. But that could have led to a touchdown. So just attention to detail, but the simple one where we can actually look at, concrete stuff that happened is get lined up. Get lined up. There's way too many, lackadaisical penalties, and that starts with the illegal shifts, Justin.
Yeah, and that even goes to some of the things that, we heard throughout the year of, that's practice, right? And it's practice. Number one, your attentiveness in practice, and then number 2 goes along with the culture of coaches that don't hold players accountable, and then a la coach like Jerome Henderson tries to hold Deonte Banks accountable for being lazy, and then he gets fired. So I hope that's something that somebody's got to get in his ear and be like, yeah, man, this is where you cost the team. This is where you cost yourself too. If you cost yourself some big plays as well. Was he on the receiving end of any of those plays? Of those 20-yard plays, do you remember?
Yeah, no, they were 2 20-plus yard catches for him. One against, one against the Ravens, and then one against the Falcons as well, I believe. And then the pick 6 against the Falcons. That would have been I don't know if it was air yards, but if they were 20 air yards, then it would have been number 6 and 7 on the year. He only had 5 catches of 20-plus air yards on the year. So that should be the lesson learned enough of, hey, man, I know Malik Nabers cares about that shit. It's two big plays coming off the board for yourself. But, yeah, I hope kind of the talking point is simple. Get lined up. Know where to be. Yeah. The other simple one would be drops. Had the 9th most in the NFL with 8. Now, when you talk about drops, you should talk about rate because the top wide receivers get the most targets. They're going to have the most drops. But out of the top 43 wide receivers and targets, he had the 15th highest drop rate. The big ones are the killers though, because he's going to have drops. It is part of the game. They beat the Commanders week 2 if he doesn't drop the ball. Yeah. Now at the same time, it's his second game in the NFL. He had a fucking phenomenal game. 100 plus yards receiving. They're not in that game without Malik Nabers, but still. That's it. But I do think this is something he did get better on with the season. He had the 2 drop game against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, and the quote saying that that's part of the game, and it looked like a bad quote, but really wasn't that much of a big deal. He had 5 in the first 7 games, 3 in his last 8. So, and two were that Dallas game. So the drops did get better. It wasn't an issue at LSU or anything. I do think he'll probably be top 10 to 15 every year in total drops. It's just part of with the targets. It's just, let's get to 29th or 30th in highest drop rate out of the top 45 receivers instead of 15th.
What was the rate?
Out of the top 43 wide receivers and targets, he had the 15th highest drop rate.
But was it less than 10?
Yeah, he had 8 drops.
Right, I want to look up the rate.
He had 8 drops, 9th most in the NFL.
The drop rate was,
I think it was like 9% or some shit like that.
Yeah, because that's a little too high. You want it
no, actually it wasn't that high. Never mind, I'm wrong.
It was 5.3%. Dude, that's not.
No, that's
not
that's
bad.
a fine drop rate.
Yeah, that's not bad. I was about to say if it's like 7 or 8 because Darius Slayton got back up this year to like that 7 or 8 number. That's like you want to get a little concerned, but 5.3% drop rate. Okay, like I think early in the year, it's really the spots that the drops came in earlier in the year. Again, the Dallas game, but people hold him accountable for that Dallas game. I literally think he was knocked unconscious. It was the Washington game. The Washington game is the big one. So just if you're going to, 5.3% drop rate, I can live with that, but try not to make it when the game matters most.
Yeah. And then the other one you're going to talk about is deep passes, right?
I'm not going to talk about it.
Oh, so I'm going to read some stats. 4th most deep targets, 22nd most deep catches. He was 36 of 41 in deep catch rate at 24%. That is something I want his stats to improve on. It has nothing to do with Malik Nabers. That to me is solely on QB play. I think we overblame bad QB play on a lot of things, or blame a lot of things on just bad QB play. The Nabers, he got open. There's so many times where he was missed, and it's not a coincidence that there's 38 quarterbacks that qualified for deep completion rate. Daniel Jones was 35th. Drew Lock was 38th. That's not good. That'll with a better quarterback, it'll increase. You don't need Josh Allen for that to increase a ton. He will get better at that. But those are like the deep passes. I want to see statistical growth. The drops to me aren't an issue, but just don't have them lose games. And then my biggest thing to improve on is get a better understanding of what your offensive is asking of you and do it.
What did you think of Malik Nabers and after the catch this year?
I thought the end of the year really popped it off, but in the beginning of the year, you didn't have those yak plays that you were looking for.
Now, talking about yak and like receivers, it's a tough thing to do because a lot of it is so scheme dependent. But that's why I like the yards after the catch over expectation stat on Next Gen. Is that when a player catches the ball based on where they catch it on the football field, where they are to the sideline, how many, the nearest defender, how many defenders are around you, they're able to calculate how many yards you're quote unquote expected to get. So Malik Nabers ended the year with plus 87 yards after the catch over expectation. That was 32nd in the NFL among qualified players. Now, a lot of those guys include tight ends, like George Kittle is ahead. He's third in the NFL. Tucker Kraft, who is a yak merchant, for the Packers. He's 4th. And a lot of that is running backs. James Conner, very good yak. So here are some receivers that were ahead of him. Ladd McConkey, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Greg Dortch of the Cardinals. You also had Khalil Shakir, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Mims, Chris Godwin, Zay Flowers, Deebo Samuel, Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb, and Jamar Chase. So those are all the receivers that were ahead of Malik Nabers this year. So that's not too bad. But, Bobby, I have the expectation for Malik Nabers based on what he did at LSU, man. I want him to be a top 5 yak threat in the NFL. Like every year, in terms of being plus whatever, like Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb were plus 200 in yak over expectation. Maybe not that much, because Jamar Chase just had an insane yak year. But getting above that plus 100 margin and being top 10, top 5, I want like next-gen stats and all the stats people or even film people to start identifying, man, look at what Malik Nabers can do with the ball in his hands. Because that's the shit that, like, all right, I'm not relying on Brian Dable, even though I think Brian Dable should challenge himself to even get better yards after the catch-wise. The Giants were okay in it this year. But that's one of the reasons why you draft Malik Nabers, is because this guy is going to elevate X's and O's. This guy is going to elevate bad O-line play, bad quarterback play with what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch. And outside of later in the year, but especially that Indy game, I didn't really feel like it was there, even though the numbers kind of do back it up. So I want Malik Nabers to get better in that category next year with more of those wow plays.
And I think he will. I think that's who he is as a player. I just think it's hard because the Giants don't operate with a lot of space,
Right.
Because of their quarterback limitations. They just didn't operate with a ton of space. And especially when you're force-feeding a guy like Malik Nabers, it's just going to be like, hey, we've got help inside. Yeah, we're covering him on the outside, but we've got help inside. So when I watch him, I still, I see the juice that the player at LSU had, and then you see it in the Colts game and the Eagles game making a play after. Now you can't rely on the Colts bad tackling to do that for you every time, but I do think that's in there. I'm not just going to assume the Giants are going to have some better quarterback play, but I don't. That's not something I worry about. That's like the deep passes for me, where it's like one, so you get better statistically, but I understand that has to do with surrounding matters. Justin, do you got anything else on Malik Nabers?
Yeah, again, I talked about this when we were, giving our most outstanding player award. What's really encouraging to me is that Malik Nabers was 6th in total receiving EPA when targeted between 10 to 19 yards. So that gives me hope of this guy can get open in the short, intermediate, and deep part of the field. We know the deep stuff is hopefully going to come with better quarterback play whenever that does come. He doesn't have those numbers to show, but the Giants between 10 to 19 yards the past couple years, especially 2023, they were really, really bad. And this year they were better because of Malik Nabers. And even though he was force-fed, he ended the year in 16th in overall yards per route run. If Malik Nabers ends the year next year at 16th in overall yards per route run, there's a lot of good receivers in the NFL. Maybe I'm a little disappointed and maybe I want him a little higher, but that's still a pretty damn good year, even in a year where he was force-fed a lot of targets. If he gets some more deep catches, get the yards per receptions up, catch a few more touchdowns, that yards per route run number is going to go up, the EPA is going to go up, everything's going to go up, and everything's going to get better.
Justin, why don't you talk to us about something before we talk about Darius Slayton?
Oh, I would love to talk to you about something, and I will talk to you about Mando, because today's episode is sponsored by Mando. I get gifts, because the holidays, my birthday's coming up in March, and something that my mother loves to give me is actually Mando, even before they were sponsoring our show, because Mando's 72-hour formula, it keeps me fresh even on those non-stop days. Made by a doctor. That's right, from the DR. Mando is science-backed for real odor control, not some gimmicky stuff. Mando's low pH formula actually stops odor before it starts, rather than just covering it up. I love Mando because it keeps me fresh all day when I wear it, and with scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, and Mount Fuji, it's hard to go wrong. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with the solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers, you get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code TALKINGIANTS, all one word, at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Bobby Skinner, you will be glad you did.
Be glad you did. Let's talk about Darius Slayton. 39 catches, 553 yards, 2 touchdowns in his 6th season in the NFL. He is a pending free agent for the Giants. second time in 6 years where he didn't lead the Giants in receiving. The other year, Kenny Golladay did. Justin, we'll break down Slayton. Those stats aren't great. But I will say that in 9 games with Daniel Jones, he had 32 catches, 469 yards, which was 52 yards per game. And for reference, he averaged 55 yards per game essentially in 2022 when he was the clear wide receiver one, eliminating the one snap he got against the Eagles and didn't and that counted as a game played. And then 45 yards per game last season when people were very high on him because they didn't have drops. And then with Slayton in 2 games without Nabers, he put up 14 catches, 180 yards, and a touchdown, which doesn't include like a 56-yard RPO taken off the board. Now, when Daniel Jones was benched and then released, the offense started featuring Nabers a little more. QBs didn't operate the same way as Daniel Jones with pre-snap reads and shit. He had 7 catches for 104 yards and 1 touchdown in 7 games without Daniel Jones. That's crazy to go from 55 yards per game to 104 yards in the last 7.
Those are Jalin Hyatt numbers.
Yes, that's exactly what they were. The drops are still a glaring issue for Slayton. And whether he's re-signed by the Giants or not, that is what he'll be remembered for. Last year was really good, and we said, hey, let's see 2 years in a row with Slayton because in college he was bad, and then his rookie year, the drops weren't there. Then you had 3 years of issues. Well, he was 15th in drops this year, 5th in drop rate in the NFL. But again, I'm happy with Slayton as a player, especially on that 2-year, $12 million contract was a bargain. You guys know me. I'm in favor of bringing Darius Slayton back with where the Giants are right now. I think he's a solid wide receiver 2 in the NFL. He attacks all 3 levels for you. He's a smart player. The other receivers depend on him a bit. So it looked like Slayton was going to have like that consistent 750 to 800 yard season, Justin, but just when Jones went out, it just kind of tanked what he did. Where again, like he just got no production. There's a couple plays up the sideline that he could have made a better, not effort, but like a better receiver probably, brings those down from Drew Lock. But outside of that, there was no getting to the wide receiver 2 in an offense that featured Malik Nabers and then Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot.
What was the catches per game and the yards per game with Jones?
I don't know the catches per game, but it was 52 yards per game. Catches per game, it was about 3.8 or whatever.
3.8. Well, 3.8 would have been the best of his career because the best of his career was 3.4 in 2019, and then the same thing in yards per game. He had 52.9 yards per game, which was his career best in 2019. So this year it was like 52. So he would have matched that if Daniel with Daniel Jones if that would have continued on. So Bobby, it just feels like to me, and I'm with you. I think the Giants should re-sign Darius Slayton, not only because not saying that he's like he's this Hall of Fame, Pro Bowl, awesome NFL player that the Giants just need to have, but in an offseason that is so huge for the Giants, because Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen's jobs are on the line. John Mayer basically said that. While there's also so many other holes that they need to acknowledge, why not just bring this guy back where you know what he's about? He's not perfect. Darius Slayton bringing back Darius Slayton doesn't mean that you can't go after another wide receiver in the drafted one if one falls to you, even though we know that's not how Joe Schoen works. We know that Joe Schoen's not a take the best player available. He likes to plan out who he's going to take and when he's going to take him. But why if Darius Slayton is not re-signed, then you have a wide receiver 2 problem. There is a problem, and that is another area that needs to be addressed. But if you bring him back, even though he's not perfect, and even though part of me thinks that almost both of these sides do need a divorce, probably Slayton more than the Giants.
Slayton needs it for his fucking self. He'd be a lot better off somewhere else.
But why create an issue at wide receiver 2 when there's not one necessarily there right now, when there's so many other fucking needs that you need to address, right?
Well, that's what it's like you said, if the Giants do move on from Slayton, you better hope you get someone in there who could tell Malik Nabers where to line up and what route to run, because
there's
Slayton
a wide receiver 2 problem. Like, who was the wide receiver 2?
Well, again, talk about and here's the thing, I'd be totally down to draft some wide receiver this year, like Ty Felton or whoever, we know, but they're not going to do that in round 1. They're probably not going to do it with the, second pick of the second round. So, Who's going to be the starter opposite of Nabers? Hyatt is not an option. Do not say Jalin Hyatt. We'll get to him. Hodgins left for San Francisco. You should not be paying the top dollar $28 million guys like T. Higgins.
When you have
and then
Nabers.
when you look at the next tier of players, well, who's the best available of those guys? It's Darius Slayton. And I just keep your homegrown guys. The Giants aren't in a position where they need to make all these fucking tough decisions. They've already made the tough decisions, the past couple of off seasons. So it's just another guy who we talk about who will be helped by better QB play. But we saw even with Daniel Jones, like he does his job. He would just become a little more explosive, have more yak ability if he had better quarterback plays as second wide receiver, which was always his best role. He was just forced into the wide receiver role. Or wide receiver one role time after time after time. So there's no other pending free agents on the Giants that are going to garner any type of money unless you think Azeez Ojulari is. And if he's going to garner any money, you should not be bringing him back. I would bring him back. He's obviously, again, flawed player. The drops drive you fucking nuts. They've happened in big moments in his career. It's who he is, and it's how he'll be remembered. But again, when you say, all right, we move off Darius Slayton, how do we address his position right now? And I just don't like the other options. And again, you could say you like Ty Felton in the 4th round. I think if you want to do that, you still keep Darius Slayton. And then when you say, well, the Giants invested in Malik Nabers and a 2nd-round pick in Wan'Dale, they shouldn't be investing so much into the wide receiver position and compare it to the rest of the teams in the NFL. Okay, but the rest of the teams in the NFL don't have, no quarterback under contract. A player, their second wide receiver being a top 10 player on their team and no pending free agents worth a damn outside of that player, right? So we got to stop talking about these cookie cutter, this position for this contract. It's how you lost Xavier McKinney. When in reality, it's like, all right, look at your situation and how you trying to make this team better. And I think Slayton is that. And if he has drops, no matter how good he is, he'll be fucking hated. If he fixes his drops like he did in 2019 and 2023, then he'll be loved and called underrated by the fan base. But I would keep, and especially if you want to draft a quarterback. So you're talking about the guy who attacks all 3 levels, is your wide receiver 2 to Malik Nabers and tells Malik Nabers where to go half the time, and you have a quarter I kind of would like to have my quarterback have that.
I have the list of some free agents out there, even though this isn't a free agency preview pod, but let's get the idea. Let's get the idea of what other options are out there if you're not a Darius Slayton guy. Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins. No. Right, those are too big.
No, we talk about you're not going to spend close to $30 million on wide receiver 2.
Right. Chris Godwin is
or the guys that are older.
Yeah.
And Godwin, I don't think Godwin could be that, but Godwin's gotten injured a couple times now. Yeah. I really like Godwin, but it feels like weird circumstances there with him.
Yeah, like a really fun and interesting big slot, but then Wan'Dale needs to be in the slot. So anyway, DeAndre Hopkins, no. Mike Williams, please no.
Please no.
Brandon Cooks, old. Robert Woods, no. Hollywood Brown, probably staying with the Chiefs. Then Darius Slayton, KJ Osborne. And
Hollywood Brown might cost more than Darius Slayton because he has that 1st-round buzz on him. He's had a 1,000-yard season. I think Hollywood probably gets a little more out there on the market.
And then you get to the tier below of guys after Hollywood Brown and Darius Slayton. It's KJ Osborne, Demarcus Robinson, Nelson Aguilar, Ashton Doolin, DJ Chark, Matt Collins, all those guys. Yeah.
I'm good. If you told me we have an elite quarterback, would I be cool with having a wide receiver 2 be bottom of the barrel? Sure. But until we have that elite quarterback, I'd like to have a good wide receiver 2 for him. So, that's where we're at with Slayton. He's obviously kind of become a polarizing player. And because he will defend, because he doesn't fucking scream and cuss and say we suck and all that shit, and he kind of plays the and everything's fine part, which can be annoying. There's obviously some hate there too. Yeah. But I think that Slayton, not a great player, definitely not a perfect player, but I think the Giants should keep him. Let's talk about Wan'Dale Robinson next, because I think this is where I could be swayed one way or the other on Wan'Dale. where I have strong opinions on the other two. We're talking 4 wide receivers. This is the one. Wan'Dale's the one where I can be swayed. Third year, Justin, was his first full season for the Giants, even though he played 15 games last year. The 5'8" second rounder from Kentucky had 93 catches, 699 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 7.5 yards per catch was the lowest in the NFL. Was third lowest last year in front of Allen Robinson and Kadarius Toney. Shout out all my old friends. Had the 12th most targets in the NFL, but was 44th in yards. Third lowest average depth of target. 4th lowest in 2023. Out of 110 wide receivers, he was 78th in yards per route run. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is a solid player. I think he's limited. Do I think better quarterback play would help Wan'Dale? Yes. I don't think it would help it the same way that it would Malik Nabers or Darius Slayton. I don't think it changes a ton for him. It changes some, but I don't think it changes a ton, and it makes him a much more valuable player. If they get better quarterback play, you'll get more of those 10 to 15-yard corners or outs where he transitions well, or some 10 yards ins. But he's been limited to just choice routes, right? Dable has put him in the Cole Beasley role, and I like Wan'Dale Robinson, but I do think he's very replaceable. He's up for an extension, and I tried to figure out what that extension could look like, and there's really no comp to see, Justin.
I somehow think, even though he's lined up in the slot 80% of the time, I somehow think that that's too low, Bobby, because his receiving EPA total this year was minus 32. If you go when he's in a slot alignment, it actually goes up to positive, which is shocking to me. But if you go out wide, that's where his receiving EPA dips down to minus 35.6. Like, it's crazy how even though he had 26 catches on the outside and only 20% of his snaps came from when he was in a wide alignment, that impacted his receiving EPA so much that it is caused to be negative, even though, like, let's be clear, his slot alignment, his EPA is only for the amount of target volume that he gets, it's only plus 4.3. Compare that to Malik Nabers, where overall Malik Nabers' receiving EPA is plus 41.8. So that's like top, like that's what you want to be aiming for. So, yeah, man, I don't know what to think of him because he came off of last year where you have some effective games, but is Wan'Dale Robinson the most impacted by the quarterback play, or do you think it's Darius Slayton?
Oh, to me, it's easily Darius Slayton because Darius Slayton's a 3-level player. Wan'Dale Robinson's a not. He's like a 1.5. Like if they fucking got Josh Allen, would he have? Yeah, he'd have some zone beater plays where he gets open deep because it's a zone coverage. But just as a wide receiver, he does not challenge you more than 10 yards down the field. Again, you'll get some occasional corners and outs where he can make a play there, but you also don't want to be targeting him a ton on those anyways because those are catch radius plays, and he has the worst catch radius we've literally ever seen coming out of the NFL Combine. So he's been limited to like that Cole Beasley role, which is valuable, but it's going to be looked at worse in a Giants offense where there's so much quick game, and it became very predictable in what they did. I remember early on in the year, Justin, before Slayton had the Seahawks game and the Bengals game, where like they need to make Slayton more of a plan on third down than Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson's nice, but he's becoming way too much part of the plan with these choice routes. But he is really good at those, but he's a limited player. Of course, he'll have some big games. So I know exactly what Wan'Dale Robinson is. A new quarterback play, will it lead to better stats? Yes. I don't think it's going to really open him up as a player, though. I think hopefully you get him to 10 yards per catch instead of 7.5. And he has, 80 catches for 800 yards instead of 93 for 699. So yeah, his better quarterback play makes every wide receiver's fucking stats better. But I don't think it opens him up as a player much more. There'll be some better yak opportunities with less stuff taken underneath. But my question is just what type of value do you put on that player? Because he is up for an extension. And there's just nothing to compare to the NFL right now for slot-only guys. You can't use CeeDee Lamb or Amon-Ra St. Brown because those guys are great. The closest one recently was Curtis Samuel, got 3 for 24. So now Khalil Shakir, same draft, same type of role in Buffalo. I could see Shakir maybe getting an extension from Buffalo this offseason, and then that being like Wan'Dale comes in like at $1 million or $2 million less per year if they wanted to get something done. But you look back at it, man, and Cole Beasley got 7.2 over per year on a 4-year deal in 2019 as a pretty similar stat profile and exactly similar role, coming out of Dallas for Wan'Dale Robinson. So he's valuable, but I hate the word replaceable because people are like, oh, that's replaceable. But I do view what Wan'Dale Robinson does in this scheme as pretty replaceable, and I think your prime example is Richie James. Is Richie James as good as Wan'Dale Robinson? Absolutely not. But he fills in that role and gets that job done fairly well.
Bobby, I just went on StatHead, and as you were talking, I did a Wan'Dale Robinson 2024 season comparison to Richie James 2022 comparison. That's exactly what I just did. They both played 17 games. Richie James's approximate value was 6, where Wan'Dale's was 5. Now, Wan'Dale killed him in receptions, 93 to 57, but 699 yards to 569. So there's, even though there's there's like a 40, like a 30 some catch, there's I think a 24 catch difference. The receiving yards is less than 100. The yards per reception for Richie James is 10, and even we looked at that as like, even though that's like low. Yards per reception for Wan'Dale 7.5, and then Richie James got him in touchdowns with 4 to 3. I also think that Wan'Dale Robinson needs more rushing attempts. So three rushing attempts for 18 yards this year. I think he should get more jet sweeps. But yeah, man. If you look at the numbers, like in terms of slot only guys, out of all the guys that primarily lined up in the slot, Wan'Dale was tied for 14th in yards per route run at 1.14 with Keenan Allen. Only Elijah Moore was worse with 0.87. So even out of the all slot guys, yeah, he gets catches, but just the efficiency is not good. And his average depth of target was second to last, with Khalil Shakir only being lower out of the slot.
Yeah. And if you get a little more of a wide open offense, does that stuff help out a lot? Yeah. So I think Wan'Dale Robinson's a solid player in the NFL, above average definitely, probably top 10 player on the Giants. Hell, probably the best pick from that fucking draft class. Actually,
Kayvon.
Yeah, Kayvon's better than him. But I don't know if I'd be in a rush to get a deal done. Hey, if you told me you get him on 3 years, $16 million, all right, yeah, sign me up. But here's what I'll say: if this was the Giants team that had to make a lot of tough decisions on contracts down the road, I'd be in an absolutely not. This is the guy that we got to sacrifice not bringing back type of guy. But because the Giants aren't in that situation, I'm way more open to retaining Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, if we're an organization that makes tough decisions based on value, and we can replace the production of this player, we can replace the production of Saquon Barkley, we can replace the production of Xavier McKinney. If those are the decisions that we're making, then you can replace the production of Wan'Dale Robinson. You may not look at $6 million a year as like, oh, that's not much for Wan'Dale. I would rather have a guy on their rookie contract that can be just a slot merchant with a high catch rate than paying a guy $6 million to do that. Unless, hey, if the offense gets better, and this will be a contract year for Wan'Dale Robinson, if the offense gets better and then his efficiency gets better, then yes, that's $6 million, $7 million, $8 million per year, yeah. But I don't want to go out of my way to give somebody $6 million just because he was a draft pick when you can easily replace that production by a guy that you can get for cheap for 4 more years.
Yeah. See, I won't even look at it as like the draft, because the draft is not a for sure thing, but just like I could find that guy out in free agency probably. But we'll see. But I like Wan'Dale Robinson. I think there's just limitations for what he is a player. He's never going to be someone that challenges down the field. You're going to need to be extremely accurate with him because he has a very bad catch radius. And I think his route tree is fairly limited. And it's not just the scheme and the quarterback. Justin, you know what's just not limited by the quarterback? DraftKings. Football fans, it's playoff time. We've got some exciting games to look forward to. And You can get in on all the playoff action right now with our partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, they are offering all new customers $200 and bonus bets instantly after betting just $5 when you use code WORLD. Love the thrill of live betting? I love the thrill of it. DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games as they happen, making watching the game that much more exciting. So, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code WORLD. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code WORLD only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. You'll be glad you did. Who we betting on? Justin, Philly, Washington. Who we betting on to win the Super Bowl right now? I'm going to bet Kansas City.
Buffalo.
You just don't want it to be a three-peat. You don't believe that in your heart.
I more than that, I want to see Josh Allen do well.
I do too, but it would be very funny that the Bills beat the Chiefs every year in the regular season and then in the playoffs lose.
Just continues.
Just be funny. Patrick Mahomes, he is inevitable. All right, just in the last guy, we're going to talk about Jalin Hyatt.
What do you even say?
I mean, I got things to say. 8 catches for 62 yards, and he could have had 8 catches for 165 yards, and I think people would still be a little bit pumped for him. But because he had so little targets, I put the qualifiers at 19 targets, which is what he had. He was 131st of 131 in yards per route run, 128th in yards per catch, Wan'Dale 129th, 4th highest average depth of target, 2 interceptions when targeted, the lowest quarterback rating when targeted, and then 131st and yak per reception. He was bad, but here's the thing: it's not even the targets that bother me, Justin. It's the fact that you just can't trust him to be in the right spot ever because he can't release the right way. He gets squeezed into plays. He can't show off his speed when you press him because if you press him, and I did the Seahawks game when he started, and I'm like, guess who got the ball here? Darius Slayton or Jalin Hyatt? Because Darius Slayton is 10 yards down the field, Jalin Hyatt 4. But Jalin Hyatt's faster than Darius Slayton, but that press kills him. And people are like, his rookie season. Let's talk about his rookie season, Justin. He had 23 catches for 373 yards as a rookie. Way better, obviously, right? Was, top of the NFL in yards per catch. But 12 of the 17 games he played, he had less than 20 yards. Like, his yards came from 3 games. 2 catches in 89 for 89 versus the Cardinals with Daniel Jones. 2 for 75 versus the Commanders with Tyrod Taylor. And then 5 for 109 versus the Patriots with Tommy DeVito. Like, 273 of his 373 yards came in those 3 games, 73%. The 14 other games, he had 14 catches for 100 yards. So, everyone wants to talk about quarterback play with Hyatt. Fuck that bullshit. He does not get the quarterback excuse. So, like, if you get Josh Allen, does he become more valuable? Sure. But if his QB is Dak Prescott, he gets you 220 yards as just wide receiver 4, right? And if your starting wide receiver gets injured week 1, he gets put in a starting role, he can maybe get you 500 yards, maybe. But it's just, he's not reliable into what you're doing. Like, his speed does bring value, right? Use him as alerts if he gets some free releases. But in reality, he's a gadget, one-trick pony player. When you're a one-trick pony player in the NFL, you're not a player in the NFL because teams know what to do. Like, his value, the reason why his value was there in 2023 is because they had a starting outside receiver who just didn't challenge you anywhere down the field, and Isaiah Hodgins. So Jalin Hyatt, had some big plays on alert routes, opened things up for crossers underneath. But then when you're not starting a guy like Isaiah Hodgins on the outside, he doesn't bring you much value, right? And if you're asking me to start a guy for a full year, give me Isaiah Hodgins, no matter who my quarterback is. At least I know where he's going to be on every play. Not worry about him getting like pressed into the wide receiver next to him trying to catch a pass. So, Jalin Hyatt, Justin, if you gave me a stat prediction next year, if we got Josh Allen at quarterback, I'd say, 24 catches for 389 yards and 2 touchdowns.
That's what he did his rookie year.
Which is a lot better than what he is, Justin. But he's also not a starting level wide receiver in the NFL, and I don't think he ever will be.
Jalin Hyatt was out there for 230 pass plays this year, according to PFF. And if you multiply, there's about 1,000 snaps on the maybe even more. I just did 60 times 17. If there's on average, if you run 60 offensive plays every game, that's 1,020. And that's total plays, not there's run plays, there's pass plays on that too, right? So Jalin Hyatt was out there for 230 pass plays, had 19 targets on the year. That's an 8.2% target rate, right? So 8 out of every 100 pass attempts, 8 of them are going Jalin Hyatt's way. That's not good, Bobby, for somebody that's expected to be a wide receiver 2. And again, I don't care about the quarter. You can't just be a one-trick pony if you want to be a successful wide receiver in the NFL. If you're the 74th pick in the draft, you cannot just be a one-trick pony in the NFL. And a quarterback can target you 8 out of every 100 balls. Target you. Forget catching the ball. Target. The catches is worse. There's just no confidence that this guy is even going to be targeted.
Well, he's just someone you can't put on the field consistently. If you're putting him on the field consistently, he is becoming a negative value to you. You put him on the field for 10, 15 plays per game and put him as an alert, yeah, there's value in that. But again, you're not really getting what you want out of that player either. And
the same coaching staff that drafted him, the same regime that drafted him, has deemed that he hasn't earned the playing time. So again, I don't really see people. I don't really see a ton of people defending Jalin Hyatt, so I don't want to talk about the whole quarterback thing like it's this massive talking point that we're trying to debunk. But the regime that was begging for him and the coaching staff that was begging for him to take this job this summer, from everything that we saw in training camp, they also have deemed him not worthy of being out there on the football field. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they were begging him to do that too. But if he lives out his rookie contract with the Giants, I'm fine with that. I'm not calling for him to be cut or anything. But
is there a chance that he's cut?
Absolutely. If they re-sign Slayton and draft a wide receiver in the 5th round or some shit, yeah.
Because now he
doesn't give you any special. He doesn't give you any special values.
He can't be a backup slot.
They might do a pick swap. They could do a pick swap with him or something like that.
He provides no special teams value. So, this is a wasted roster spot. Currently.
And I don't know how he can develop, because it's just you can try and get him a fucking much bigger and stronger, but I don't think that's happening on his frame, and then you kind of lose some of what it makes him so valuable. So, again, I think he can bring value, as an alert route, which is what he was as a rookie. He was a glorified alert route. But putting him on the front side of any progression, or he's the third in a pure progression, it's a recipe for bad results for the team.
Yep.
So we'll see. But I'd hope he lives out the rookie contract, because guess what? He is capable of putting up a 100-yard game. He's done it. He's done it before. But I think as teams have, planned for him a little bit more when he's on the field, it's just very clear what he's doing. Now, hey, you can get 3-4 explosive plays out of a backup wide receiver per year, and you're happy with that. You're not happy with him as a guy you trade up in the 3rd round for, but you're happy with who that player is. Just remove the name and the draft status, but not going to live up to what he was drafted to be. Justin, that's an episode. We'll be back on Friday with a mailbag, unless there's some type of crazy big news, which I just doubt. Even if they hire a DB coach, we're still going to do a fucking mailbag. So we appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, let's go Big Blue.